Welcome to part 2 of developing your products and services.
Human resources. Whether you are running a sole proprietorship, LLC, corporation, or a nonprofit organization, you will need to know who will execute the functions of your products and service distribution. Your human resources are comprised of personnel, contractors, consultants, coaches, and even volunteers. Personnel is generally comprised of board members, officers, employees, volunteers, and interns. These positions should have clear job descriptions with responsibilities, key performance indicators, compensation structure, and benefits packages. Contractors are human resources you will use to outsource a step in your distribution process. Contractors are not employees and are considered 1099 contractors. They are assigned a project and are paid based on their set rates for the completion of this project. It may be more cost effective to subcontract out specific steps in your process of distribution. Save this information because you may need this later when you're developing out code of ethics with policies on how your contractors will be selected and expectations for doing business with your company. Consultants and coaches are experts with a specific genre that will help you to make the best decisions or outsource specific tasks within your organizations. Sometimes consultants are used to further your knowledge on a subject, assist with managing details that you are unable to perform, or simply help bring knowledge and awareness to your customers for services or products that you offer. Consider who will manage and execute each step in the delivery process. Give them a job title, name that will be consistent throughout the organization. You can learn more on this subject. Get to our tutorials on building your organizational chart and job descriptions. Materials and supplies. It's important to determine how you will secure the supplies and materials necessary to produce a product or service and send it out into the market. Cost of goods sold is the cost you incur only when a product or service is sold. As you reflect over your processes, identify any materials or supplies that you will need to acquire if you sell a product or service. Consider what it takes to build, manufacture, or produce a product or service to the consumer. You can also jot down the vendor or supplier name to help you reference or create a task list of vendor relationships you would like to develop. A task list will serve to work on putting your process into action. Your task list may include the vendor name and a goal to gather additional details, to start a partnership and/or to write a contract for a vendor or a supplier service. This task list should be written down on a separate list to complete outside of your business plan. Consider if you plan to keep inventory on hand for the products and services you plan to sell. You will want to include a method for tracking and monitoring inventory. Inventory will have a shelf life and the value will decrease over time. Consider the length of time before inventory is sold and consider if having inventory on hand is the right process for your business. Inventory can be a liability and require initial financial investment. It can also be considered an asset as it holds value in the event of liquidation and shows up on the balance sheet. Overhead expenses are items that you must have to operate your business. That means you need to cover these costs to keep your doors open for business even if you do not sell a product or service. Consider the overhead types you will need to offer the best services to the consumer. Items like warehouse rent, utilities, phone services, and internet can be listed so that you know what overhead you may incur now or in the future that is necessary expenses to remain in business. You do not need to know the exact cost of these items yet, but if you take the time to list them out, it will give you a starting point to begin researching the cost to open your business. If you already incur costs, consider working with a cost reduction specialist to ensure you are not spending cash flow on unnecessary or overpriced business expenses. Consumer education and marketing. You may not need to acquire or help the customer acquire these resources. However, it is important to fully understand the resources the consumer may need to access your product or service and/or to use your product or service. It is good to educate the consumer prior to doing business with your company. This is a great way to build credibility and authority in the marketplace and may be useful when developing your marketing message and establishing partnerships with other organizations. Next, it's important to determine the ideal customer for each product or service you offer. Sometimes the ideal customer may be the same for everything you offer, and other times it may vary. Your ideal customers are consumers who desire to purchase the product or service you offer. Understanding who they are will help you determine where to find them, how to engage with them, and how to turn them into a loyal customer. You may have several types of ideal customers based on the products and services you offer, and you may find a pattern that demonstrates a specific ideal customer that can be targeted for all the products and services you sell. Consider the products or services you have listed and described. Answer the following customer segmentation questions for each product or service. Number 1, demographics. What is the age, gender, education, income level, ethnicity, and any other descriptive characteristics of your ideal client? Number 2, psychographics. What are their beliefs, values, lifestyles, social status, opinions, and interests? Number 4, geographic. The area or region they live and or work. And also consider where those people might actually be hanging out. Number 4, behavioral. This refers to the life cycle of their buying patterns. These buying patterns are connected to life situations, special occasions, events, life changes, holidays, vacations, etc. Once you know who your ideal customer is for the product or service you offer, the next step is to find out where they are located. The goal is to discover where to find them so you can interrupt their day and bring awareness to your product or service. Getting the attention of your ideal customers is paramount to engaging and converting them into a customer. This information will be used when you form lead attraction strategies. You can learn more on our videos around marketing campaigns. Now that you know who your ideal customer is and where to find your ideal customer, you want to engage your customer by communicating to them. This is lead engagement. The goal is to decide how you will communicate to them. You may communicate differently to each person based on their location. If someone is found on social media, they may get a private message to talk. Whereas if someone is found at a networking event, they may get a handshake and a verbal introduction followed by a business card. Maybe you plan to engage with them through a flyer or commercials that invite them to reach out to your company. Be sure to consider all marketing options. You will also investigate the cost for these marketing options. It is important to understand what differentiates you from your competitors. Knowing what you do differently will help you to clarify your message for your ideal customers so they will see why your product or service is a better option for their needs. Based on the products or services you plan to bring to the market, list companies who sell, make, or distribute the same or similar products and services as you. Each product or service you offer should have clear pricing strategies so that you are breaking even and making a profit in your business. Things to consider when setting pricing strategies for your products and services. SRP, suggested retail price. Considering your competitors, what are your ideal customers currently willing to pay for this product, service, or similar products and services on the market? Use this as a base point for your pricing strategies to determine your retail price for products and services. Cost of goods sold. What is the cost to you to sell your product or service? Remember earlier, we mentioned that the expense only incurred when you sell a product or service is a cost of good. You must know the wholesale price of your products, services, or parts to determine the final retail price of your product or service. Sales commissions. Consider the commissions you may pay for someone to generate leads and sell your products and services. Sometimes you may not pay a commission. Other times you may pay to help generate the sales needed to earn revenue. If you plan to pay any commission based on the sale, be sure to include this expense when factoring in your retail price of your product or service. Profit margin. Look at the suggested retail price you have identified through the willingness of consumers to pay or what they are currently paying your competitors. Subtract your estimated cost of goods and your estimated cost of commission from the suggested retail price. The difference is your potential profit margin. Be sure to calculate this per unit. To calculate the profit margin and percentage per unit, take the difference in dollar amount and divide it by the suggested retail price. Then take that total number and multiply that by 100 to get your total profit margin and percentage per unit. This amount should equal 30% or more of the suggested retail price. If you are satisfied with the profit margin percentage, you can use the suggested retail price. If you are unsatisfied with the calculated profit margin, you will need to recalculate the adjustments needed to increase or decrease your final retail price. Now that you have set the pricing strategies for your products and services, it is time to identify your sales goals. Sales goals should factor the capacity of production. This is the total time or measurement of number of units that can be distributed in each time period. For your business planning purposes, you will project your sales goals for the next year. Based on the number of sales you project, you can determine projected expenses and net profit. Here are some terms to consider. Sales goals. Consider the capacity at which you can produce and distribute the product or service you plan to launch in the year. How many can you produce and distribute with excellence? This will tell you the potential you have for sales within that year. Use this number to calculate your projected gross revenue. Gross revenue is the amount you will make when a product or service is sold before deductions. To project your gross revenue, multiply the number of sales by the total retail price to get the gross revenue in dollars. You now have projected gross revenue for the product or service you plan to take to market in the next 12 months. Do this for each product or service you plan to take to market and add the totals to determine your projected revenue, accounting for all products and services you plan to go to market. Gross expenses are the sum of your cost of goods sold and any sales commissions per unit multiplied by the total number of projected sales goal. You can tally that total COGS and sales commissions for your gross expenses per unit and multiply that number against the total number of units you plan to sell. This becomes your projected gross expense per unit. Do this for each product or service you plan to go to the market and add these numbers to get your total gross expenses. Your projected net profit will be your gross revenue minus your gross expenses. This gives you a general idea of what you will make from selling products or services. You will need to break down your overhead expenses and identify the annual overhead expenses and subtract that from your net profit to determine your actual profit or loss for your company. You can learn more about profit and loss in our financial planning workshops. If you feel that this content has been helpful, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to all of our handles, and be sure to forward this information on to others that may find this useful. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching.